What's up, guys? I'm Fabio Salas, and welcome to the Living Mad channel, where we talk all about the American dream. So this is the second video in a 3-video series that I wanted to make about real estate, to tell you about some of the things that I've learned, and specifically to share with you one of my personal experiences of how real estate has helped me. So this is about a duplex that I bought in California. I just moved here from California 3 months ago, a little bit over that, back in April. When I was in California, I was there for just a little over 3 years. Before I got to California, I was stationed in Japan for 2 years. So the whole time that I was in Japan, I knew that wherever I got stationed next, I was gonna wanna buy a rental property. I was hoping to get stationed in California because my research told me that California was a really good market to buy in at the time. I was fortunate enough to, at the end of those 2 years, have enough or to get the orders that I wanted to California. And during those 2 years, I spent a lot of time making sure I tracked my budget and tracked my expenses to save enough money to buy a house in California. Now, when I got to California, or actually before I got to California, I had to figure out what kind of house do I want? What neighborhoods do I want to look at? There's a lot of different neighborhoods in San Diego, just like anywhere else in America. You got a place like Poway, right outside of base, where houses are going for $750,000. Really nice houses, really close to work, popular neighborhood, great schools. But for me, I knew that wasn't a market that I wanted to invest in because the houses are very expensive, but the rents don't really make sense from the investor's perspective. So I wanted to look at neighborhoods that were somewhat up and coming, maybe not quite as expensive, but with the potential of being up and coming in the future, prices going up. And I wanted to look at neighborhoods where there was a huge rental market because I knew that I was going to turn it into a rental once I left California. I found a real estate agent who happened to be a former Marine officer who did the same job that I did. So that he was a really good connection. So that's one thing you got to keep in mind. Whenever you're buying a house, the agent that you get makes a big difference. Not all agents are created the same. And not all agents understand what it requires to have a successful rental property. A lot of them understand what it means to sell a house to a homeowner, someone who wants to live in a home, find their dream home, families, whatever. But most of them, very few of them, actually understand what it means to own a house as a rental. So that's an important part of it. I found that, and the guy was great to me. He was able to help me out. So one of the things that I did is I bought a duplex. I knew that I didn't want to buy a big expensive house that I could only rent to one family in a place like San Diego, and it'd be $300 or $3,000 a month for a $700,000 property. So I bought a duplex. A little bit a cheaper neighborhood, but still, compared to the rest of the US, relatively expensive. So a duplex is basically a unit with two units, or a building with 2 units. So it was 2 houses attached to each other. So what I did is I lived in one unit and I rented out the other one through Airbnb. Airbnb being the vacation rental properties. I managed the whole thing myself. I did the cleanings, I managed the bookings, all of that. Spring and fall of that year, this was 2016, I made enough from the Airbnb that most months I covered most of the mortgage. May, June, July, and August, so basically the summer months when it's very touristy. San Diego's touristy all year round, but summer, it's very touristy, it's packed. During those 4 months, I made more money from the Airbnb than I needed to cover the mortgage. So what am I telling you? For almost a year in California, I lived rent-free. Now, if you don't know anything about the military, one thing I can tell you is that if we live off base, we get what's called the housing allowance. And the housing allowance is based on the city that you live in. So the more expensive cities, you get a bigger housing allowance. Well, in California, my housing allowance was right around $3,000 a month. The mortgage for the duplex was around $3,000 a month. But because I had the Airbnb making me all that money, I basically lived for free. So those $3,000 a month that I was making housing allowance, I was saving. Saving, investing, putting into index funds, and saving for the next rental property that I wanted to buy. And that helped set me up for success later on. So just being able to do that, just being able to find the right property for that kind of market made a huge difference for me over the span of 3 years. Now, if you can do that for yourself, If you can, especially if you're young, in your 20s, early 30s, if you don't have a big family, if you can do that for yourself, think about how far ahead you'll be by the time you're my age. I'm 39 now. I think about if I had been buying multi-family properties all along, instead of buying some of the properties that I bought in the past, how much further ahead would I be? And it's not about, you know, maybe you feel like you got to make some sacrifices because maybe you want to have a house all to yourself, or maybe you want to buy your dream home. But if you're 25 years old, you don't need to be in a rush to buy your dream home right now. Heck, if you're 35 years old, you don't need to be in a rush to buy your dream home right now. I know what it's like being in your 30s. See a lot of your friends, you know, they've graduated college, they've got good jobs, they're doing all these great things. But you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You don't know how much debt they're in. You don't know what their balances are on their credit cards. You don't really know anything about their finances. You just see what they show the world. You see the house, you see the cars, you see all the fancy things, the vacations they go on. But you don't know how much they're saving. You don't know how much they've got invested. You don't know if they lost their job today, would they be bankrupt in 6 months? Because that's the case for a lot of people. A lot of people are living great lives, but if they lost their job today, they would be in a very bad place 6 months from now if they weren't able to find a job. So that's why I think real estate is a great thing to help you kind of form a protective layer around you. You know, invest in 401ks if you can, invest in HSAs if you can, health savings accounts, invest in TSPs if you're in the military or government, invest, you know, start a business, invest in all these other great things, but never forget real estate, because real estate is something that can really help propel you forward along with all those other investments. It's great to diversify, but real estate is really one that I believe can help propel you forward. Now, when I say buy a multifamily, I'm talking about 4 units or less, because that's a residential property. You can get a residential loan. 5 units or more, that's commercial loan. Whole different process for getting the loan, a little bit more complicated. Still doable. I'm not saying don't do it, but maybe for starting out, maybe just start with the 4 unit. Some people start with the big properties right away, and that's great. If you can do that, if you want to do that, you can do that. The point is, think about it, consider it. If you can get yourself, even if you have just a single family house, maybe you have a first floor in the basement, you do a little bit of remodeling, and you turn that basement into an apartment with its own little kitchenette, where you and your family live on the first floor, and you rent out the basement. That basement might cover half or three quarters of your mortgage. So now, instead of paying, say, $1,200 a month on mortgage, you're only paying $400 a month mortgage. It's a huge difference, guys. If you can do that, if you can make that small sacrifice of just giving up a space in your home, you can save a lot of money and really propel yourself forward for the future. And again, as I've said before, it's not about, you know, trying to be the biggest, the richest guy on the block, or trying to be this multi-billionaire that everybody just looks at and like, oh my God, he's so rich. It's not about that. It's about giving yourself freedom, so that if you lose your job today, you're not bankrupt in 6 months. Or maybe you just decide, you know what, I'm done with this job. I want to change careers. But the career that I want it's a 50% pay cut. Like me, I'm in the military right now. I know that when I retire, I want to go into teaching. Teaching does not pay nearly what I make right now, so it's going to be a huge pay cut. But that's okay, because I've got investments, I've got rental properties, I've got other things that will supplement my income, where I can maintain my standard of living without having to make any sacrifices. But that's because I've been planning for it for years. And I want you to be able to do that. I want you to be able to carry on your life, live happily. You know, you don't have to sacrifice all the things in the world, because you still need to live your life today. But if you make just a little bit of sacrifice on a couple things, one of them being your home, you can really set yourself up for success in the future. So I hope you got something from this. If you did, hit that like button so everybody knows this is a good video. Hopefully you learned something. I put a thought in your mind to maybe get you thinking. For those of you that are young in the military, maybe you'll start to consider buying a rental property. Make sure you do your research. Buying a property is not going to be automatic money anywhere you're at. You got to do your research. You got to know the market. You got to make sure you buy at the right price, all those things. But if you do your research, I'm telling you, in the long run, it will pay off. All right, guys, hit that subscribe button so you know the next time I upload a video. Keep living mad, and I'll see you in the next video.